Sunday. So, I want to talk to you about adaptation and evolution. This is something that weighed heavily on me, and a while back there was a Huffington Post article. Normally I'm not a big fan of the Huffington Post, but every once in a while something pops across, and there was an article and they said, I want to say it said, "Evolution's not over?" question mark. And this is something I've been arguing for a long time. Evolution's a process, it's not a destination. There is no perfect balance. Like, when people talk about balance, they get this idea that there's a happy medium. And that's not generally the case. You see, life is more like an irregular sine wave. And it's simply due to the fact that we are constantly bombarded by invading stimuli constantly. And we have to adjust and adapt. When something becomes a regular stimulus, we adapt to it. When something is a one-off, we just have to adjust and course correct. But you see, this is the problem with a lot of the thinking. People seem to think that evolution is this linear path where we were this one thing and we're heading towards this enlightened other thing. And that's not true at all. Evolution just means change over time. That's all it means. It just means change over time. And that being the case, all we're talking about is adaptation. And yes, genetic mutations happen, environmentally spurred mutations happen. Pretty much all of these adaptations happen because of some sort of mutation, regardless of how it was stimulated. But the thing is that they're all just simply adaptations. Now, in the world of biology and ecology and whatnot, we can see that not every adaptation is beneficial. And this is something you have to understand. Evolution doesn't necessarily mean making something better. It really doesn't. There are, you can classify adaptations or mutations in one of three categories: good, bad, and neutral. There are the positive ones that will help the species survive and thrive into the next generation. And then there are the ones that will absolutely not. And they're called maladaptations. Anytime you maladapt, you run a significant risk of failure, and failure could, in some cases, mean the end of a species. Or it could simply mean that you have a much larger positive adaptation curve ahead of you. And then there are also neutral adaptations, adaptations which don't affect the survival of the species in any way, shape, or form, but do happen to change. But I'm not really talking about that right now. What I'm really aiming for is this idea that it's not this one-way, unidirectional journey. It's really not. It's just constant adaptation. That's all it is. It's constant adaptation. And so going back to our sine wave idea, if you look at a cardiac rhythm on the thing, you got low spikes and high spikes and all that. And each of the spikes is followed by a dip below the static line, and then it rises back up, and then it dips below again. It's pretty much life. And you don't necessarily get this singular up, down. Sometimes it could be a long, steady, gradual rise and a sharp drop, because we're not talking heartbeats, we're talking life in general. Is there a guarantee that there is always going to be a downturn? No. And there's not a guarantee that there's ever going to be an upturn either. But generally speaking, there is that oscillation. And the thing is that you have to course correct and adapt. And the best way to do that is to be able to use our gifts as humans, our adaptations as humans, to be able to creatively interpret data, to be able to confer with each other on the meaning of data and all that, and to kind of press forward and actually help our evolution along, and do things with purpose for a predictable cause. There's always something that you can do. There are many cases where if you change something, you have no idea what the original outcome would have been and whether or not your change actually did any good or not. And there are other times where you can pretty reasonably predict that it was a positive change. It just depends on the circumstance. But you just got to understand that there's going to be a constant battle for changing course. Because like I said, there are uncountable stimuli bombarding us, invading us at any given moment. And any one of them could put a slight variation on you now that stacks up later in the future, especially if you're traveling linearly. If you don't course correct, that can veer you severely off course. So, for those of you who drive or have ever ridden a bicycle or whatnot, you realize you don't look directly down in front of the wheels, you track well ahead of you, right? This idea of a more goal-minded or at least future-minded focus allows us to track and course correct better. That long-range vision allows us to see and in some cases predict what's going to happen within reason so that we can adapt and course correct and make better decisions to avoid any kind of setbacks. You need to do this in your own life as well. You need to be able to look down the road and see what behaviors, what actions, what diet and exercise, everything is going to do to you, not just today, but what it's going to do to you tomorrow, in 6 weeks, in 6 years, in a decade. You think nothing of it now because, frankly, humans are very short-sighted. The future is very intangible. And because we realize that there is chaos in the universe and tomorrow could look very different than we anticipate, we just kind of go with it. And to a point, you do have to be able to just go with it. But on the other side of it, you do need to be prepared. You need to make some kind of predictive calculation for where you want to be so that you can make steps to get there. And I guess if you don't have any goals, if you don't have any cares, if you don't have anybody to look out for or anybody looking after you, you can just, play it by ear. But for the most part, if you want any kind of success in life, you've got to make proactive steps to kind of drive that particular adaptation, that particular evolution, that particular change over time that you're looking for. Nobody gains a new skill set by just haphazardly going through life. People gain new skill sets by recognizing a stimulus and practicing their response to it and finding controlled ways of repeating it until they've got it down and can do it on command. And that's really what we're looking for, is the ability to self-direct, the ability to not need somebody or something to signal you to do this, do that, become this, become that, but the ability to guide your own adaptation, your own evolution. Yes, there is a lot that is out of our control. There is a hell of a lot that is out of our control, and that's fine. There's always going to be some of that fractal nature. I mean, it's inherent in the universe. You're never going to get rid of it. And I wouldn't want to. It would make the universe terribly mechanical. And it already is terribly mechanical. But luckily there are so many different parts moving in so many different directions that it creates a very, very fun chaos that allows us to kind of be surprised. But still, it's important to understand that you're not going to face an easy path, really, with anything. And if things are easy, you hit the jackpot. It's just fortune of causality, and you happen to get things lined up just so. But don't expect it to happen for anybody else. And if you're teaching somebody how to do what you've done, don't just tell them, oh, it just falls into place, because, well, it may not and frequently doesn't. So you always have to be adaptable. And sometimes, sometimes you're not ready to adapt in a certain direction. And that's fine, as long as you can recognize it. I know there's certainly plenty of times that I get advice that I'm simply not willing to heed. It doesn't make sense to me, it's not who I am, it's not where I am. And as long as you're willing to work with that and say, well, okay, but I can do what I'm doing, or I can do what I need to do and get where I need to go by making these adjustments instead of those recommended adjustments, and I'll still be okay, and this feels right according to my temperament, my skill set, my whatever. In the martial arts, there's no one right way to do anything. There are some ways that are more advantageous than others. There are some ways that are simpler or easier than others. But I've trained with plenty of guys who would rather use just bull strength over good technique, because that's what they understand. I even fall prey to that on occasion. And to a point, that's okay. You also have to realize that that may be an individual circumstance, or that may be something peculiar to you. But either way, it's good to be adaptive, to be able to recognize the stimulus in the first place, and then to respond intelligently to it, and to move in a direction that will ultimately be beneficial to you. So that's my little spiel on adaptation and evolution, especially personal evolution, whether it be success, athletics, business, whatever it may be. Just understand that if you never adapt and you do stay on a linear path, I guarantee you that there have been some chaotic variables that have crept in and already knocked you far off course. And if you are never willing to adapt, you will never get to where you're going, because you simply got turned around and didn't even notice it. So always be willing to adapt. Always, always, always. And don't be scared of the word evolution. It just means change over time. Things happen, things change. That's just life. Talk to you guys later. Good journey.